welcome back to the Whisky Cask Club podcast. Today I have a very special guest with me. I'm joined by our CEO and founder, Mr. Alexander Knight.
Danny, it was nice to have you here in Singapore.
Yes, we are in Singapore today. Yeah, it's a nice little office you guys have here, nice little setup.
It's our little tasting room in Telok Street,
Yeah.
where we entertain our members and drink a lot of whiskey.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of drinking a lot of whiskey, today as our specialized whiskey, we have our Abelauer 12 years old, double cask matured. Bang right here, and I'm going to let Alex pour us a couple drams.
Whisky Cask Club and cans here, Danny.
Fantastic, good to see. Lovely.
This is a little bit of afternoon drinking at 3
Absolutely.
on a Tuesday afternoon.
Well, one of the perks of working in a Whisky Cask Investment company.
So this is my favourite whiskey.
Is it?
Yeah, we've got, as you can see from the selection we have behind us, actually we've got a few that we've put away because we've got an event on a boat at Sentosa tomorrow.
We do, yes, we do.
So we've put some away, but we normally have sort of 10 to 15 different types of whiskey on the shelf here at any given time. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we like having people over to try the whiskies that they're buying barrels of.
Well, cheers anyway, Alex.
Chin,
chin. Chin.
Nice to have you here in Singapore.
Thank you. That is very nice. So, can you tell us a little bit about the Abelauer, what region it's from? And
well, it's a Speyside whiskey, so not too far from Macallan and a lot of other Speys. It's one of those whiskies that does best in sherry butts, in sherry casks.
Right.
I really like it because it's very, very easygoing and pretty sweet.
So it's fairly accessible to like a wider audience,
sort of
basically.
Vanilla-y flavour to it. It's quite a light whiskey. It's obviously a non-peated whiskey.
Right.
And it's as you can probably see from the colour here, it's good. It's got a good solid golden colour to it. Yeah.
No, it's as a non-whiskey specialist, I have to say it is very pleasant. And so this one is 12 years old. So what does that mean then when it's 12 years old? That means that it's in the bottle for 12 years, or what does it mean when you see on a label, this is a 12-year-old whiskey?
So what it means is it's been in a cask for 12 years.
Right.
So this whiskey, if it was bottled this year, it would have been put in a cask in 2012. So that means that it's spent all of that time over the last 12 years maturing and becoming this beautiful colour and taste. I think it's a double cask.
So that means it's been in two casks? Or?
Yeah, that means it's been in two casks.
Right.
So you've also got a situation with it's been re-racked at one point.
Okay.
Which means taken from one cask and put into another one.
And what's the benefit of doing that?
Well, you have all sorts of different flavoured casks. If you see on the shelf behind us, we've got all these different Tommentals there.
Right.
All of which it's actually all the same whiskey.
Yeah.
From the same distillery.
Right.
But it's been matured in a certain cask for a certain period of time. Then they've split it up into all those different casks to give it different flavours. And all those flavours vary very significantly.
Right, so the cask is what determines the changes in the flavours and so on and so forth. Okay.
Absolutely. So that's the thing that's always worth looking out for whenever buying any whiskey casks, is what cask it's in. If it's been in a different cask to the one that it's in now, because it just affects the flavour profiles.
Right, right, makes sense.
So now we're going to try some of the different whiskies. But I suppose we better drink these.
We better had.
That is good.
That is lovely.
So, with these Tommentals, so these all went into the same cask originally when they were
initially distilled.
Initially distilled as new make. They went into the same cask, but as you can see, they're all different labels.
Right.
So they've all been in. They've all been re-racked into different casks, and you can see the differences in the colours. One of these is a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask.
Nice.
This is in a Merlot wine cask.
Right, and so it's interesting you say that. So a lot of whiskey will be stored in previously fortified wine casks, is that correct?
Bourbon casks.
Bourbon casks.
So the vast majority of whiskey gets put into bourbon casks. Why don't we have a crack at the...
Yes, let's do that.
You can smell it's got a sherry...
That's a much different experience to the first one, to the Aberlour, I have to say. How old are these?
So these don't have age statements on them.
Right.
So this, difficult to say, but probably no more than 6 years old, I wouldn't have thought.
And why do people not put age statements on? Why do distilleries not have age statements?
It's mainly demand.
Right.
That demand is so strong that realistically they're trying to put as much whiskey out the door as possible.
Right.
These retail, if I'm not wrong, for around 100 Sing a bottle, whereas these other ones are obviously the older they get, the more expensive.
The more expensive they become. Exactly.
But you do have this. I think it's actually really clever because it gives people a really good idea of the different types of whiskies that are being produced in Scotland. This is a Speyside Glenlivet, is Tom and Toll. So it's all from that same area of
Speyside.
Speyside, yeah. And Speyside, just to give you an idea, I don't know, maybe you want to.
Yeah, we can put a little image for you
so you can have a little introduction to where Speyside is and its proximity to Edinburgh and Inverness and places.
Do the whiskies change significantly from each region?
Not massively, but yes.
Right.
I mean, there are distinct flavours between them. So, for example, Islay whiskies tend to be quite peaty.
Right.
So, and Campbelltown have their own unique flavours too, as well as Highlands and Lowlands. And Speyside tends to be more of the sort of lighter ones. But there are peated Speyside whiskies also.
Interesting.
So it's the variances in the whiskey are just really basically down to the actual distilleries themselves. But the Islay whiskies are really very
quite heavily
for their peating.
So Alex, obviously the Whisky Cask Club, we're a relatively new company, but would you like to tell people a little bit about how we started and where we're at present?
In 2020, COVID struck us all. I still have a property marketing advertising agency, which we do events for property developers and estate agents to bring people to events, mainly in the Fullerton Hotel here and the Marriott, and those Saturday and Sunday events for people to buy property in various different locales around the region. So obviously couldn't do any of that during COVID for social distancing and all that stuff.
All that malarkey.
So as everyone was doing at the time, they had conversations with people who they hadn't spoken to for 10 or 20 years. And it was a question of, one of my mates said, do you want us to sell some whiskey casks? And I'm like, tell me about it. I mean, my mum was Scottish, so it helped me with the whole...
Getting over that initial...
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of in my DNA, so it's one of those things that we really launched ourselves into. And now in 2024, we've got this nice little tasting room in Telakaya Street and going for global domination.
Yeah, it is a great tasting room. If you're interested in this kind of investment, please do send us a message and drop by and taste some whiskey and learn a little bit more about the whole space.
I think we need to go for our next one.
I think so.
So that was the Caribbean rum cask, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, that was Caribbean rum. Is this the Merlot? What is this?
No, this is the cognac finish, which is pretty jolly good too. Again, a different one, but again from the same original batch of whiskey that was then decanted into different casks to give them different finishes.
Super. Well, cheers.
Chin chin.
Chin chin. Where then do you see yourself growing from here? Obviously, we're already servicing, hundreds of clients and helping them with their investment. So where do you go from here? What's the next step?
We want to get into independent bottling because we want to form complete the circle in terms of client exit. When they actually do want to finally exit, we obviously can help them with finding other investors or bottlers or blenders or helping them sell at auction. But what would be ideal is if we could help by buying the cask back from the client and bottling it ourselves as an independent bottler. It's a project that we're working into at the moment with our expert James from last week's podcast.
Yeah.
And it just comes down to what are we going to be able to what sort of casks should we be bottling? So we're discussing.
It would be interesting if you were to, at the moment, say what kind of whiskey would you make? Would it be an Islay? Would it be a Speyside?
Well, that's a very good question. I think probably a Speyside to start with, simply because of the fact that people tend to prefer unpeated
whiskies. Yeah.
However, having said that, there's a great market for peated whiskies. So we do tend to sell a lot more whiskey casks of unpeated whiskey, however. So I think initially we would go for a Speyside. However, that would be up to our man James to figure that one out.
Yeah, he's a smart boy, our James.
He certainly is. And so, I mean, we're working on that. So I guess it's just a case of coming down to, finding the right casks, and asking our clients if they want to sell them to us.
And, how else do we as the Whisky Cask Club, how else are we setting ourselves apart, looking to 2024?
We are the only company in Singapore that is dedicated to just selling whiskey casks. I believe that we're the only company that has a whiskey tasting room like this that's just dedicated to demonstrating to people what their casks will likely taste like in a certain period of time at a certain age. There are companies here that sell watches and crypto and handbags and things like that, all of which are interesting. But the thing with whiskey is it's all kept in a bonded warehouse in Scotland, so it's completely hands off. And people don't really want to have to worry about, in Singapore, keeping handbags in dehumidifiers,
right?
Or classic cars that they have to keep in bonded warehouses, in a dehumidified bonded warehouse, or elsewhere. And it's so all that sort of thing, and watches that can break. And so it's just a much simpler and more straightforward investment. Even property, to a certain degree, has its own foibles.
Sure.
I mean, you've been in this business.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, look, in this part of the world, I mean, it's humid, it rains a lot, and all of those play a part in it's not easy to maintain the quality of your property for a long period of time.
And not only that, also you have people who become delinquent with their rents.
Oh, also true. Yeah.
And you have to deal with all sorts of various problems.
Yeah.
Whereas with whiskey, the only problem that you may have is the angel's share. Well, there is a yearly evaporation from it, but that's kind of written on the box, so you know it from the start.
Sure.
And should anything happen to the cask, it's fully insured.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess the benefit as well of Scottish whiskey is it's cold in Scotland, so the rate of evaporation is a little bit lower than it might be. It's about 3%. Am I correct?
No, it's around 1.5 to 2.
Is it?
It depends on when in the process it is.
Okay.
I was talking to these guys from Vietnam the other day. It's really, really nice guys who are doing their own whiskey, and the evaporation rate's 12% per year.
In Vietnam?
In Vietnam, because it's tropical whiskey.
It's just hot, yeah.
12%, can you imagine that?
It's a lot.
So you open your cask and like, oh my God, where's it all gone?
Yeah, but they say the angel share is what gives it its mature flavour, right? I mean, that's
yeah, but still 12% is a lot.
12% is a lot. Yeah.
And that's why Scottish whiskey is the best place to store. Scotland's the best place to store your whiskey. Mainly, they know what they're doing, number one. Number two, you've got a situation where there are 30 odd million casks in Scotland maturing. They produce around 4 million a year. So, you know, you've got sort of a few years supply there at least.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's one of those things that they're actually very good at doing. They're very good at looking after it. All the insurance is all sorted out. So if there's any mishap, a cask gets broken, what have you, it's all covered.
Right.
When you do want to sell it, we've got the way to help you to sell it. So I mean it's as low maintenance and investment as you can really get.
That's right.
The risk is 4x. If you're living outside of the UK or you're trading it outside of sterling, then you have to pay for it in sterling. So if it's in Singapore dollars, there's an FX risk, or USD or AUD for that matter, or Thai baht also. So, or any other currency that people want to buy it in. So there is that risk in it. But, you know, if we can help exit for the best price possible, you're still going to be making a phenomenal return on investment anyway.
Yeah, no, most definitely.
The Lefroigs are doing 18% per year at the moment.
Really?
According to our data and
Wow.
some of our supplier data too.
Wow.
It's remarkable.
18%, well, that's comparative to what?
If you have a Macallan, it does around 13%.
Right.
The Kalila, which is up there, is, I believe, around 16% per annum at the moment.
Right.
So it does depend on the whiskey that you buy.
Right.
But as I may have mentioned, that you know, it's all about the exit at the end of the day. So the better known whiskies are easier to exit.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So just coming back to obviously the percentage increase, is there a way that our customers can see that? Is there a way that they can track that and stay in tune with it?
So we've got our members area, which is going online within the next few weeks, which you and I are beta testing at the moment.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
And we're just making sure all the data is correct before we hand over the credentials to the clients, so they can see what the estimated value is, any variances that are going on in there. And also there will be a functionality to sell their cask and to offer it to other Whisky Cask Club members.
Fantastic.
At some point.
At some point, yeah.
Version 2.
Version 2. Yeah, that's good. No, I think that's a great point. And I think obviously developing this community that we are a club is also another thing that I think we are really doing much better than other people in this industry. I think we are, you know, we have our monthly events, and you know, we really want to develop this sense of community, that we are a club and everybody is welcome to enjoy this product.
Well, the goal is to have our own brand and to do our own independent bottling, to have our own club rooms in Singapore, Bangkok, Melbourne, Phuket, you know, and probably Bangkok.
Yeah, yeah, that could do. Yeah.
You know, in Ho Chi Minh City and various other places around the region, then we'll just spread, because the whole point is that we want people to enjoy their whiskey. We want them to be able to have this sense of community, and at the end of the day, it's about, you know, having some fun and making some money.
Of course, of course.
And if you can combine those two things, then happy days.
And it is happy days. Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. Speaking of which, looking at the months ahead, we do have quite a few events coming up. So next week on the 29th of April, we have our very first webinar. Maybe not very first. I don't know if you know.
No, it's not our very first.
Not a very first.
It's the first one that James is going to be.
It's the first one that James is doing. So Whisky advisor James Caden, he is a whiskey boffin. He will be running a webinar.
We should call him the Whisky Boffin. That's such a great idea.
Yeah.
Make that his official title.
True. Anyway, Whisky boffin James Caden, he's going to be running a webinar next week, so we'll leave all information about that in the description. Please do sign up and come along. James knows his whiskey like the back of his hand, so it will be a very interesting for you to learn more about whiskey investment and to ask a few questions as well. So all information will be detailed below. And towards the end of May as well, We're looking to have more events in Bangkok, in Melbourne,
And here in Singapore.
and here in Singapore. So please do stay tuned for that. Follow us at the Whisky Cask Club, where you'll be able to see all of our updates on these events.
Do you remember what we've been drinking? Was that cognac?
We had the cognac before. The cognac was what we just had.
I think we should try this one again.